No phone buzzing, no conversations around you, no pressure to perform, no masks to wear, just you and the stillness. For most people, this seems to be the scariest thing imaginable. We've been trained to flinch at silence, conditioned to see empty rooms as evidence that we're unloved, unwanted, irrelevant. Aloneness has been framed as failure. If you're alone, something must be wrong. But what if it's not? What if everything begins there? Not the life you've been sold, success, popularity, constant validation, but the life underneath it. The one no one else can see. The one only you can live. Solitude is not a sentence, it's a doorway. Not to escape the world, but to finally enter it. Because in that stillness, the performance ends. The noise fades, and the only thing left is you. And that's where everything real begins. Society tells you that you need to be surrounded. From the earliest age, you're encouraged to gather friends like trophies, to define your worth by how many people want your attention. You're taught that love is the ultimate goal and that being alone means something's broken. But have you ever stopped to wonder why? Why is it that solitude, the most natural human state, now feels alien? Why do we dread being alone with our thoughts? Why does silence make us reach for distraction? It's because society has confused being alone with being unloved. But they are not the same. Solitude is not the absence of love, it is the presence of self. And that presence is a rare thing in today's world. When you sit in a room alone, without a screen, without conversation, without someone else defining the moment, something strange happens. You start to hear things you forgot were there, thoughts you buried, feelings you avoided, dreams you never voiced. And for a while it's uncomfortable, because the noise was numbing you. But if you stay, if you resist the urge to escape, clarity arrives, and with it a quiet kind of power. You begin to realize you're not missing anything. You are simply distracted from yourself. We live in a culture that praises connection, but fears introspection. We're flooded with advice about how to attract others, but rarely taught how to befriend ourselves. Yet the deepest, most important relationship you will ever have is with your own being. Solitude is the mirror where you see that relationship clearly. And for the first time, you're not performing. You're not pleasing. You're not adjusting your light to fit the room. You are simply there with yourself. And if you listen closely, you'll start to recognize the voice underneath the noise. Not the one shaped by algorithms or expectations, but the one that was always yours. The one that knows who you are before anyone else told you who to be. That voice doesn't shout, it whispers. But in solitude, the whisper is enough. There's a freedom in being alone that most people never taste. A freedom without audience, without applause, without comparison. This is the existential freedom. The truth that you are not defined by others, but by the choices you make in the quiet. You are free not because you've escaped people, but because you've reclaimed your selfhood from them. You begin to live, not as an echo, but as a presence. And that presence is enough. Thinkers like Emerson and Thoreau knew this well. They didn't retreat into solitude to run from life. They walked into the woods to meet it. In stillness, they remembered their belonging, not to a social group, not to a trend, but to existence itself, to the wind, the earth, the stars. Solitude, they taught, is not disconnection, it's realignment. Because when you step back from the noise, you begin to hear the quiet rhythm that ties all things together, the pulse of nature, the intelligence of being, the sacredness of simply existing. And for a moment you remember, you are not alone, you are simply whole. The irony is, when you are whole, you stop fearing solitude, and you stop depending on others to make you feel complete. That's when relationships transform. They're no longer places to hide from yourself. They're not attempts to fill a hole. They become choices, offered from abundance, not desperation. When you know how to be alone, you become better with others. Because you're not performing. You're not seeking rescue. You're not pretending to be smaller or bigger than you are. You're simply you, present, grounded, real. And from that space, the connections you form are deeper, truer, less fragile. Because you're not leaning on them to hold your identity. You've already met yourself. And maybe for the first time you realize you're not lonely. You're free. Loneliness is the ache of being disconnected from yourself. Solitude is the peace of reconnecting. There's no emptiness there, only presence. The world will keep trying to convince you otherwise. It will sell you distraction and call it entertainment. It will package performance and label it success. It will flood your life with noise and call it living. But the truth is quieter. It waits in the silence, in the space between messages, in the moments when you're not being watched, in the breath you take with no one around. That is where you find yourself, not your roles, not your image, not your curated self, your actual self. There is power in choosing aloneness. It is a declaration that you do not need to be seen to exist, that your worth is not up for vote, that your presence is not dependent on approval. Solitude is sacred because it cannot be faked. It is not for display. It's just you, unfiltered, unedited, whole. And in a world of mirrors, being alone is how you stop reflecting and start becoming. In the stillness of solitude, something extraordinary happens. You reconnect with the very essence of your creativity. It's as if the mind, freed from the endless demands of the outside world, finds its natural rhythm. In silence, ideas surface without the clamor of distractions, and the mind, unencumbered by external judgment, becomes a fertile ground for innovation. Think of the great creators who found their spark not in the hustle and bustle of social circles, but in the quiet of their own company. Einstein's theory of relativity didn't come to him in the midst of a crowd. It came when he was alone with his thoughts, in a quiet space where the world's distractions faded into the background. Virginia Woolf's profound insights into the human experience were born in the silence of her own mind, as she retreated to her own thoughts, allowing the depth of her inner world to surface. Beethoven composed symphonies that continue to echo through time, not in a room full of people, but in moments of solitude that allowed his genius to emerge without interruption. The truth is, creativity isn't born from the noise, it's born from the quiet. When you embrace solitude, you're not running from life, you're giving yourself the space to meet it more fully. In solitude, you're not performing, you're becoming. And in that space, you give birth to your best work. So, let solitude be your sanctuary. Not as an escape, but as the sacred ground where your ideas can take root and flourish. The breakthroughs you've been waiting for will arrive in those quiet moments. So don't fear the silence. Step into it, not to escape life, but to finally enter it. Not to isolate, but to integrate. Not to hide, but to remember. Being alone isn't the absence of love. It's the space where love, real love, can finally find you. Not as someone else's version of enough, but as your own. In the stillness, you will face your shadows, you will meet your fears, you will feel your longings, and then you will meet yourself. And maybe for the first time, you'll be home. If this speaks to the part of you that's always craved depth over noise, solitude over performance, presence over popularity, this is your reminder. You were never broken for wanting space. You were never wrong for choosing quiet. You were never lost for walking alone. You were simply returning to the one place that never left you, yourself. Solitude shifts from being a feared absence to a celebrated presence. It's in that quiet, untamed space that you can unearth the parts of yourself that the world has conditioned you to overlook. No longer a place of emptiness, aloneness becomes the soil where you plant your most authentic self, free from judgment, comparison, or the weight of external demands. In solitude, you stop measuring your worth by how much you can give or receive in the eyes of others. You realize that you've been whole all along, just waiting for the moment when you could step into your own life without the distractions of constant approval or social noise. This is where true creation happens, not because you're trying to prove something, but because you are finally listening to what you've always known deep within. You start to live according to your own truth, not someone else's script. The more you embrace solitude, the less you fear it. The more comfortable you become with being alone, the more you begin to relish the peace that comes with being fully yourself. No need to perform, to seek validation, to be anything but exactly who you are in that moment. You realize that it is in the stillness that you find your strength, your clarity, and your freedom. And with that realization, solitude ceases to be something you endure and becomes something you seek. Because in it, you find the one thing that cannot be taken from you, your true untethered self. Being alone isn't loneliness, it's liberation.